Hi, my name is Isabella Johnston, the Intern Whisperer, and today's tip of the week is about ChatGPT and how it can be used in the recruiting process. Most people have heard about ChatGPT, and there is a lot of concern, but I encourage everybody to do their research on this. It is produced by OpenAI, and one of the many uses that it has that can be helpful to an HR department is in the recruiting process. For example, it can be used to streamline processes and achieve greater efficiency. So ChatGPT can automate repetitive tasks in the recruiting process, like screening resumes and scheduling interviews. Automating these tasks can free up HR professionals to focus on more strategic activities like engaging with the humans. Do your research and learn how to leverage this powerful tool to improve communication and processes while keeping an eye on how it improves your people. So this week's guest is Sir Chad Hoover. Okay, you guys will be able to hear all about why he's Sir Chad Hoover. He is the founder of Fenix Digital Studios and Game Dev, the board game, and he is a problem solver extraordinaire. I have known Chad for a while. I am so excited to have him on my show. I've been trying to get him on my show for quite a while, and he's got lots of really great stuff to tell us about the game industry and even more. So Chad, tell us about yourself using only 5 words and why those 5 words.
Yeah, so best 5 words to describe myself. I'm a dedicated, driven, and determined project manager.
Okay, so why? I mean, it seems obvious, but our listeners don't know you.
This is true. Over the past 13 years, I've spent a lot of years doing community support and a lot of organizational driven. I've done events for conventions. I've always tried to stay busy. I've always been an entrepreneur by trade. And I am, as a project manager, is my classically trained skill, being able to just love people and being around them and just kind of foster growth is just something that lives and breathes inside of me every day. So
I'm going to give you another word that I don't think that you had on your list, so I'll give you a few. I think that you are a community builder. So that's
sure.
2.
That's a 2 word. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm still going to count it as 1.
Sure.
So I can explain it, but I think you are a community builder. I think that you are a fierce opponent in Dungeon and Dragons. So I'm adding lots more words because I've observed that, and that you are a closet chef. A lot of alliteration there. So
True. I mean, there's a lot of things that people. I mean, I'm a jack of all trades, master of none, and better than someone that knows how to do one. So, and I think that's just as my production journey over the past 13 years is because being very adaptable and being very try to overcome adversity, right? That's made myself a a Swiss Army knife per se, and even in my current new role, right? They feel it every single day. So I do a lot of different things than just what I would normally just focus pure.
cool. One of the things, why don't you share with our listeners something that you worked on while you were in Orlando, because you're not here anymore, but to help build our community, something that you helped foster and launch?
Sure. So I had 2 big initiatives that I took the mantle over in a variety of fronts. And the first one that I took over to support the community was the Indianamicon Foundation. So I was the executive director for many years. I started as a volunteer in the art department, and I worked my way up to leadership in the board, and then eventually turned into being an executive director when some of the leadership had stepped away. And so I took the mantle on my back, and I ran all the events, and it facilitated all of the logistics on a monthly basis, ran logistics on every jam that we've had over the past several years. So it was my duty to execute the day-to-day during the jam itself. So all the coordination from all the attendees to event management and stuff like that. So I didn't handle anything before the event or post the event. I handled the 3 days of those logistics. So coordinating all the sponsors and the judges and all of those pieces. It was just here recently that I had to actually contained and controlled the whole process due to some events that I had to deal with. And then the other piece of that story in Orlando was I was the operations director for the Orlando Game Space. And so for those who are unaware of that, that's a co-working facility inside downtown Orlando that focuses on emerging technologies. And it's been around for about 7-8 years now. And it got started similar on the same time that Indianomicon did. And I helped build out that building. So it was by the sweat of my back that the building kind of came to, did all the construction and all the painting and all the elements to make it to what it is today. So and I just recently kind of stepped away from that position to look into the future and what new avenues can present itself.
So why don't you tell us where you got started? What is your educational background? You can start at high school, but most people start
Sure.
at college, to how you got to where you are now in St. Louis.
Oh yeah. So the school conversation is pretty interesting. Us being a podcast, I don't want to give the long story, but going through school, I actually had 8 different majors. I couldn't decide what I wanted to do, in a variety of ways. I did art. I did criminal justice. I was an athletic trainer. I was a marine biologist. There's this whole story, long thing. But
Wow.
and then eventually it turned into going into food. And so, as you mentioned earlier, I transferred into and started to train to become a professional chef. So I was a chef's apprentice for a few years, and I've always been a creative knack. I've loved games my entire life, and so I decided that I was going to potentially yet change my major again, and I applied to gaming college out in Denver, and I got accepted. And then I was able to move out there and take that, and that's kind of where the journey started. I was there for a few years. The school no longer exists. I come from a very, 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 very bad place in the industry that I don't like to talk about, but I will talk about it today. So I graduated from a school called Westwood College, and for those who are unaware of what that is, there is a famous meme out there for our industry called "Tightening Up the Graphics in Level 3." It is a QA tester's video, and if you've never seen it, go watch it. But that is where I come from, and this was back in the heyday. I mean, this is 14 years ago. Well, I started 2007 is when I went to gaming school. So it's been a quick minute. And so once I graduated, I knew that I didn't have the right education that I wanted. I started to learn about being a team leader, and I didn't really focus on art. I didn't really focus on programming. There was this other skill that I was good at. I was good at this like collaboration thing and bringing people together, but I had to figure out where I could go to like focus on that. And then I learned that Full Sail University had a design degree program, and they focus a lot on production and team management. So when I went there, it was an exhilarating experience. And so I went to 3 major conferences. I got Scrum certified when I was there. My final project was amazing. It was an outstanding experience. And then I graduated, and then I moved back out to Denver after graduating, trying to get to the West Coast and head into the AAA world, as what most college graduates do. And that kind of started this journey of being this entrepreneur, production individual. So focusing on purely production, not dealing any different roles, no QA, right? But as a producer and a project manager, you learn that your skill set is dabbling into multiple different things, and you wear multiple different hats because you need to be most aware of what's going on. And so worked for a small studio, released about 16 out of their 20 different projects in about 2 years, and then had the opportunity to potentially relocate back to Orlando. And I got the opportunity to work for a potential incubator startup with an individual down in Orlando. And I was there for about 6 months, and then I found that my time potentially could have been spent elsewhere. My team that I was helping build wanted to step on our own. And so the game and the studio that I was building, I stepped out fully on entrepreneur mode, and they trusted me and I trusted them. And so I've been dealing with the whole entrepreneur route for probably a good 6 years. And worked for a multitude of companies. I worked for Brand XR. I released a whole crap ton of mobile projects. I won awards. I worked on a giant VR project called Virtual Battlegrounds for about 3 years. So I was kind of like I'm kind of like the Deadpool of production in Orlando. So it's like if people needed production support, I was there to help and build out in that community space in the game space while running day-to-day operations. So. And then now I'm in St. Louis and a whole different ball of wax. So I'm leading a team of 50 and leading the entire production on publicly. I can specify 2 projects that we're currently working on.
That's pretty cool. Are you at liberty to share the name of the company where you're working?
I'm working for a company called Mob Entertainment. They make a franchise called Poppy's Playtime.
Cool. That sounds like a pretty cool journey there. I also didn't know some of that other background that you had mentioned. What is your favorite game that you like to play?
Oh, I mean, I'm always been a classically, I mean, back in the other room, I have Legend of Zelda is always a fan favorite. Growing up with the NES. But right now I play a lot of zombie crafting games. It's kind of where I spend and fill my days. I play a lot of our own games currently, so I do series of testings every day. So
And people
currently I
get
don't
paid.
spend as much time as I should, but I'm hoping that will change so I can get back to itself. Plus, being able to play my own game that we'll talk about soonish.
Yeah, and you get paid to play games in your job.
Yeah, relatively, but
How awesome is that?
my job is definitely much more complicated than just that.
I understand. Yeah.
I do lots of walking and having meetings.
Yeah.
It's especially where the studio is at in their growth phase. So we're doing a lot of hiring and a lot of onboarding and a lot of training. So yeah.
Super cool. So let's talk about your own company, Fenix, and then also the board game.
Yeah. So Fenix is its own thing. We focus on kind of a marketing publishing tactic and route. So back when I came and left the incubator and I started my own thing, I had a game studio and I had about 20, 30 people that were working for me at the time, and things started to dwindle down. And so I kind of evolved this, and I looked at my own skill set, my own time, of what I could focus on to being what were my strengths. And so when I rebuilt Fenix, and if you go to my website, you can actually see the mission, right? It was built from the ashes of what I let burn. And so focusing purely on like a product owner, I have intellectual properties that I want to be able to execute, but the goal here is that I construct partnerships with other studios that will help bring these ideas to life. So as the foundation for Fenix continues to grow and dollars gets added to that, right, I will continuously reinvest into my companies and my partners that want to be along into this umbrella that I'm building. So it's a little bit differently than what most people think about a publisher relationship, but at a core, right, there's that value. So currently I have 2 partnered studios. I have A Square Games and Simulation based out of Orlando, and then I have Brickerback Games, which is based out of Philadelphia.
Wow. I'm learning so much, and I've known you a long time. There's other stuff here. I'm going, wow, this is cool. So you talked about what Fenix is, but you might need to spell it also for our listeners, so if they're listening, want to go look it up.
It's more of the actual phonetic version versus the actual word itself. So it's capital FENIX, all of them capitalized, and then Digital Studios.
Very cool. Let's go talk about the board game. Game, because I've been a participant in that one. So let's go ahead and even include some little shout outs for some people that were significant parts of that journey.
Yeah. Oh, so that has been a journey of 2.5 years. So how that got started was I knew in my career I was knowledgeable in production, understood Agile, understood Scrum, but I was having a series of issues kind of like converting and getting to the next step. And so I knew I had a good degree of competency there. And so I was like, well, how about I build a tool that helps kind of sell this idea of how a game is made? And so the pandemic happened. And so when the world tried to figure itself out, and it took about 4 months for the world to like, oh, I could actually still be productive, I was going kind of crazy. I didn't want to play games all day, but because I was already in a remote situation. And so my world didn't really change. My world changed because everyone else couldn't figure out how to do. So I had to keep myself busy. And so I just started this idea of working on this board game. And, through the pandemic up and through about January, I was making good strides at that first Christmas in 2020. And I was like, I think this is something that I want to spend my time on doing, but it's going to require me to get some unique partners, right? This is not something that I can just be like, Chad, you can only do this yourself. You need other people to support unique pieces. So the first person I went to was I had a specific vision on what I wanted it to look like. And there was a specific individual in Orlando that it wouldn't be to where it is today if it wasn't for Karis Baker. And she's a technical artist for currently Unity, and she's a very good friend. And you'll actually get to see her in a video that I have as well. And so I created this relationship. She started to do a lot of stuff, and then I had cross paths with with my lawyer, and he's like, hey, I got this friend that I think that would be a great addition to your team of what you're building. He's had a published Kickstarter. He feels that he would be in this whole, so John Laster for Laster Law introduced me to the gentleman who runs Brickerback Games, Alex, and it was like a match made in heaven. Things that he was dealing with on the professional corporate world of production, he was dealing with, and so you could see the correlation within this. It was a very good mesh from a kind of like consultant. That's where the relationship started, and he's been every step of the way for the past year and a half. And so now I consider him a full-blown partner into the launching of this for Bricketback Games. But I think the cementing point of where this happened was we had a brand new studio move into the game space, and they were friends with another friend of mine for 302 Interactive, and I saw a different way that Unleashed Media and Sebastian looked and perceived certain things. And I have a very good sense of character. I can read people really well. I have a sense of like emotion on people, so like this innate kind of ability. And I was like, getting Sebastian on board would push this project to a whole different degree. And so one day I had a closed meeting and I was like, hey, this is the situation. I'm working on this project and I feel that you're the right person for this job, your company, of where you do things, and I can't pay you currently. This is not, and so I'm like, if you give me just whatever filler space that you want to give to me, this is why I feel this is going to be important. And he and his company have literally dived off the bridges and things over the past 2 years that have blown me away of all the product support, all the application, all the web development, all the things. And the key difference is it's a very like mutual balance. And so we work together to solve our problems. I don't be like, I need you to go do this, handle it for me. I will go in there and get my hands dirty just as the same. It's just like I'm an Unleashed Media kind of employee because it's a very give and take relationship. I'm very understanding because money has not really been a conversation piece for any really portion of this project. And so there's no like foundational being like, oh, you're going to get 10%, you're going to get 20%. Like, no, this is purely when I tell you, this is a passion project, but a passion project that has the opportunity to go entirely something else when, everyone gets to see really what this project is about as its core.
Yeah.
And then
Go ahead.
And then the final piece of the kind of the core teams is, so eventually when Karis got busy, I had to bring in a secondary artist, And so I had another friend that was a concept artist, and I set the bar, and I'm like, I need someone to fill this role because I'm losing traction, I'm losing momentum, and I will pay you a small amount of money for each of art, and I will give you the same pay that I was paying Karis. And if you're willing to do this, but if you can match the style, you can have the job. And so I gave her a test, and she did 3 different cards, and with a few tweaks, but for the most part, she crushed it, and she's been doing it ever since. She's probably been over a year now, and tons of majority of all the content that you'll see in the release project has been Mel. And then the final piece, which is something that I want to make sure I share with you, and you can potentially have it on the podcast because it's a video, is this will be the first public showing of my Kickstarter video that is fully done and ready to go.
Oh, cool. And Dave Vance did that.
Correct. And so the final piece of the puzzle was Dave Vance and Soyo. And I have loved everything that Dave has ever put out. There's a reason why him and I connect, because it's our love of people. And that is why we have done so well in not only GameSpace stuff, Indianaamicon stuff. We see it from the same focal lens, right? We understand how important the person is. And so you're really going to even see that in the video footage, right? We try to capture what this game pulls out. It doesn't go into the details of how the game actually works, but because it's based on real ideas and real momentum, right? You'll be able to learn those pieces. So instead of this instructional video, it's like, hey, this is what you're going to be able to witness and feel.
Mm-hmm. So that was a good story, but you didn't give out any details about how this game works. It's a board game. If
Yes.
I'm saying stuff that you don't want said, I know you'll shut it down. But to me, you're a Dungeon and Dragon guy, and we didn't even talk about that. But it's a board game, and I thought that was interesting.
So the game itself, as you bring up Dungeons and Dragons, and I'll kind of point this, right? The board game, for all your listeners that are board game fans, so there's 3 elements that are kind of mixed together. As you've said, I'm a very big fan of Dungeons and Dragons, and I love the team camaraderie, communication that happens at the table when you're playing Dungeons and Dragons. So I wanted to take that element, but add in some specific board game elements. So there's a game out there called Pandemic, which puts the table against the game itself. Their goal is to try to eliminate this pandemic that's happening on the board. So they have a series of events that they need to stop. But at the same time, there's a game out there called Ticket to Ride. It's a point-driven experience on a carnival. And so you have to get as much events and activities happening when you play under that specific time limit. So adding these 3 ideas together, right? I mixed them in a pot, threw in some 8-bit music and maybe some video game characters, and I outpulled Game Dev the board game.
Okay, I think that's more helpful for sure. What I liked about the game, and I was part of the testing team, is that it was relatable. You asked some questions, so there was people that we know from Orlando, which is super cool. That there's characters like that, and then you also had some well-known, famous people in the game industry that I had not heard of, but I actually looked them all up and I went, okay, these are pretty impressive. So
so that's to me and all the people that I've talked to so far, it is the one element that makes this board game stand out about any other board game in any similar capacity. It is the only digital and physical board game that relates to real people inside a physical product. And so I wanted to make sure that I created a human element, because as Game Dev the board game, it is a teaching tool, right? You understand Agile, you understand Scrum, but it also allows you to interface and learn about people that have been in the industry, both new people as well as people that have been there 30 plus years, that have done amazing things. I've spent 13 years, 14 years of my career rubbing shoulders with some pretty legit people. And so when I've been having these conversations for better part of a year, right? And I've had peaks and bounds on how my conversations have gone through. But for the most part, majority of people just love this idea and being involved. and being a part of something that gets to shine their own light. And as you've said, like I have seriously legit named people that have done phenomenal things. But when, as you brought up, it's like I asked these questions, when we were doing our filming, they were like, I don't know who this is. And I'm like, this person has done this amazing thing. It's like, I know, but it's like this provided an interesting light of why the industry element is so unique to this game, because it will be even greater as more content can come out for it once it becomes Kickstarter success.
I don't think I knew that it's set up to be a digital game also.
That is
just a
not
board game.
technically confirmed, but it is in the plan. So depending on how well the Kickstarter does, it is one of the future goals. It's not on the Kickstarter stretch goal plan, but if we crush it, it is something that both Alex and myself are considering in making a digital version or element that makes this game even more adaptable. So, there's a thing called the Board Game Simulator, which you can play on Steam, right? We've thought about doing something like that, as well as potentially actually releasing you can play like Uno and other card games. They'd be building a digital where it's like, hey, individuals like yourself and maybe some other people were online, and then we go into the game itself, and now we're playing with 7-8 people come across the world, and which is a possibility. So
yeah, because you could build leagues and have competitions.
Yeah,
I would think. Yeah, that sounds very interesting. Okay, so what is your favorite game? I think I asked that of you earlier, but I was expecting it to be Dungeons and Dragons because that's what you actually played, when we were down there at our Orlando Game Space. So
yeah.
this was a surprising answer to me.
I think, it's one of those things that I love, but it's just like, I cement myself in all these different areas to try to do, right? When the grand scheme of things, right, my love of Dungeons Dragons is still an early thing. I've only been doing it for 5-6 years, but I love being a dungeon master. I love taking my charismatic extroverted self and doing all the voices and being kind of unique, and kind of help telling the story, and shout out to the menagerie for being an amazing group, and leading and letting me lead them for the past, as we head into kind of 5 years now.
Yeah, they're a nice group of people. I've enjoyed it. I don't know if we'll get to see them as much though, since you're not here.
Correct.
Yeah. All right. Well, what is your favorite quote that you live by and why?
So this was told to me, I would say it's 2023, so this was told to me 13 years ago, and I live through it every single day, and it's rule number 6, and it's leave your ego at the door. As someone who has a very strong, unique alpha personality, I love this industry, but I wear it on my sleeve, and so my passion rises to the surface very quickly, and so I'm very I'll call it strong-headed at times, but I don't do it out of ill will. It's because just I love what I do, and my passion pushes through all the different layers, and so I have to always keep myself in check to understand that, knowing that it happens, take a break, walk away, right? Because as a producer, as a project manager, the people are most important, and how I communicate to them, how I listen to them is very a core part of my job, and I can't be bullheadedness and have my ego driven out where it's like I don't want them to feel like they can't interface with me and feel uncomfortable, right? In purely 6.5, 7 weeks being in this new job, I have so much leadership, and trust in my team. It's words can't even express it, how crazy this journey has been in just purely 2 months.
I'm so happy to hear that for you. Very, very happy. So rule number 6, we got that one. You also shared another one though I liked very much, and it came from Fast and Furious.
Oh yeah, so as I've said before, I'm a very driven person, and I am always on the go. I have the arc reactor on my chest because I am always moving and keep myself busy. But the quote that you're referencing is, "I live a quarter mile at a time," and so I'm always in the moment, but always learning what's in the future.
I like that one quite a bit. The hardest lesson that you learned that really changed your life, what was that? Because I'm going
Actually,
to tell you before you even start, you're a Jesus guy, and I'm going to make sure we share that publicly too. So I'm always looking to see if you're tying it back into some of those things that we used to have quite a few talks about faith. So I'm curious.
well, so I will. I mean, I can tell 2 points of story. One was actually falls into that story. Is so back in my master's degree, I actually just told this to one of my teammates just this week, and so I was told that I had a poor performing individual on my team. And so as I was starting to learn about project management and being a leader, right, my external producer, which was the teacher at the time, he told me that I needed to document and write all the stuff down for this particular individual. But what I failed to do, which I wasn't aware of at the time, is I wasn't actually doing my own job. I was doing what he requested, but I wasn't doing what I needed to do to help the other portion of the team. And so when I got to the point of turning in, he got let go because I did my job to prove the fact that he was underperforming, but then found out that I had to stay, and then I learned that I failed and I got fired off of my project. And I was blown away. Didn't even expect it. And that same weekend was also the 2011 and which still goes down and still celebrated to this day. This is important to note, is that the 2011 Global Game Jam was also that next week. That same weekend, I got fired, and I helped build a team of about 14 individuals. We built 2 games, one physical and one digital. We split in 2 teams. We won awards. We every 20 or every 10 years they bring our award back and make reference to our game and our team because of how well we did. And so when I came back and started that next Monday, I was an entirely different producer. I managed completely different. I didn't let other things get ahead of me. I took the bull by the horns, as you might say, and I made it my own. And even my old extra producer told me that I was an entirely different person in a positive manner. They looked at me completely different, and I took this failure opportunity and I had to turn it around or it was going to spiral out of control. And I had literally 2.5 days to turn it around, because I had to earn the trust of a brand new team that didn't know who I was, respectively. And so, and as you mentioned, kind of the Christian thing, this was actually kind of started this journey that I'm on now. I had a really, 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 really tough 2022, probably more tougher than I've had over the past 6 years. And I had a lot of fires that I had to deal with. And it was about September, August time, and I pretty much gave up. And I pretty much prayed and I was like, listen, I've spent 13 years trying to do this and I'm burnt out, I'm frustrated, and I'm tired. And it's like, I have friends that have done these amazing things. And I'm like, why do I feel like I'm just nothing compared to where I feel I should be after 13 years? And I was like, this is my last request. And I was like, if I get to March being literally now, right? If I get to March in GDC time, and I was like, if my world doesn't turn around by March, I will quit all games and I will go fully and go apply to the CIA, which is the Culinary Institute of America, and I will go be the most awesome culinary chef the world's ever seen. I'll take my passion and I put it directly into food. And I said this, and I was like, it's all you deal what you want to do with it. And I think that he was just waiting for me to truly just give up, because within 30 days, a personal situation changed, which provided much more drive and change, provided the ignition on the board game, and it ignited that to being where it's progressed to now, with the Kickstarter launching literally within 7 days from now, and this opportunity to go work for Mob. And now I'm making more money than I have in many years. So
Yeah.
it's still, I don't understand, but I'm not here to understand that piece. I'm just being along for the journey, and it's interesting because this is actually my it's at the end of the month, but my spiritual birthday is the 27th of this month.
So it's about walking in faith.
Yeah, I mean that's a lot of, I've had to learn. Even when I got baptized, I couldn't control all the things. I used to be this uber planner and stuff like that when it came to what's happening, but I have learned to just kind of accept for the flow, right? Even with coming here, it's been an interesting kind of journey, and I'm glad the things are working out the way that they are, and nothing really isn't exploding and on fire yet. Knock on wood. But it's been an interesting piece, and that's what it is. I had to trust and know that he's going to have my back.
So that was the hardest lesson, but what are you most grateful for? Are they related?
I think what I'm most grateful for is those select individuals. Even the situation might not have been good, but I very much appreciate the people that had my back. And they had it in very unique ways. And, if I could tell my story on this podcast, we'd be sitting here for hours. But, and I know that in some of the references that I'm mentioning, without not, getting into greater details. Yeah. But it's, those are the things that I can't take away, because it's defined who I am and what I gave, right? And so I don't look at it as a problem. Could have been done differently, possibly, but I exhausted what I needed to do for the opportunities that those individuals gave.
Mm-hmm.
And I made them successful in my own right, and what happens in my in my stead, it's outside my control now.
Yeah, that's true. Well, we're going to take a moment and acknowledge one of our sponsors, Transcend Network.
Transcend Network helps early-stage startup founders find product-market fit through weekly experiments, receive fundraising support, and build a global founder-investor network for EdTech and the future of work technologies. The Intern Whisperer is affiliated with Employers for Change, and we thank Transcend Network for being a sponsor of our show.
And we're back to the second half of our show, where we usually talk about the future of jobs, industries, what is it going to look like in 2030, 2035, and we're coming back to our guest, Chad Hoover. So Chad, what do you think the future of games and work will look like in 2030? It's an opinion question, so there's no wrong answer.
Sure, right? I just recently kind of switched, really kind of focusing on in itself. I think us as an industry coming out of the pandemic, we were an industry that really didn't falter. We grew astronomically, right? People were at home, people still did things, right? Even we were mentioning the board game stuff from earlier, right? There's different ways and avenues to get into games. And I think it's going to continue to still evolve, right? As an industry, we are still rather young. This is no film industry. I don't even think we've actually really hit 50 quite years yet. So, I still have friends that have done it for 30 years. And so, and they're pioneers in this industry. So we still have a lot of growth, and it evolves. There's technology that always comes to surface. The last bee's knees, we had, NFTs and the crypto market, where that's going, and, what people want to be on board with all of that, right? It's not something that I involve myself in, but I have friends that are diving into that full head steam, because they feel that that's going to be the way of the future, and how we look at transactions and stuff like that. But it's one of those things where our industry is so young that we're going to have pockets of individuals that will want to do one way, and then you'll have the one ways that you'll be not really like old dogs and keeping their ways, but we are an ever evolving industry.
Hmm. I agree with that, and it's just massive how much there is. A lot of people, when they think about games, they're not understanding. Yes, there's board games, and yes, there's games that you can play on your phone. There's games that you can play on consoles. There's games that you download from places like Steam and other marketplaces. There's all of these different ways that people get together, and games are, I know you said not even 50 years old, but I'll throw it back there. I mean, it's as old as time. People were playing
Oh,
games,
well, sure.
kicking them. What
When you put it in the context, then yes. I mean, it is. Yeah. I mean, games have been going around,
for a
for
long time.
centuries.
And now we have serious games. So, you and I have gone to the ITSEC conference here in Orlando, Florida, that has a focus on simulation, training, and learning. I'm always amazed at going at that conference and seeing how much changes from year to year and
Sure.
just what is going on.
This past year was the first time I ever got to go to the show, right? I've had colleagues and friends that have gone multiple years, right? We were mentioning about community stuff, right? And I had the opportunity to speak this year, right?
I
So
know. I was gonna bring that up.
going my first year and speaking my first year, because of the Armed Forces Jam that a series of individuals, including myself, kind of helped put together and foster, right?
Yeah.
And for this idea up in Orlando, right, focusing on the armed forces, as well as space, right? We have these series of events, and so having them partly involved with events like ITSEC is provide a sense of visibility, right? Even when showing there, like, games are very interesting when it comes to the serious world, because as a serious game, there's a sense of realism of what you're actually building, right? So there's a complexity that a lot of game developers don't quite understand until they actually dive into it, right? Being in the military side of that with ITSEC, right? There's this degree of bar that you must hit because there's certain expectations or rules or way things must be done, right? There's not a lot of wiggle room for, I would say the word might be creativity, right? But even within the Armed Forces Jam, it allowed to take an idea or a problem and foster that creativity element to merge this idea of utilizing the game developer, right, to bridge that gap, right? So it's a lot differently than like a simulation company that's their forte, right? They understand those contracts, they understand those long development cycles. But as a game developer, there's a different mindset there.
Yeah. And just so our listeners know, when we talk about games and we're saying serious games, those are games that are there to help people learn skills or certain tasks, repetitive tasks. And for example, one might be in construction and you're learning how to use the construction equipment in a safe setting. So it allows a muscle memory to kick in there and really be absorbed as it. But ITSEC has defense, it has healthcare, it has, gosh, what do we have? Government, we have education.
Cybersecurity.
Yeah, so many industries that are represented there. So, what was your paper about? And let's give a little shout out to Adrian and Austin,
Yep.
who
And
are
Mike
the
Bianchini.
Yep, and the founders of Adrian and Austin, the founders of A Squared, but I
Yep.
don't know Mike, so.
Yeah, Mike works for a company called Dignitas Technologies. So he was the actual constructor. He was the founder of the team, and then reached out to myself, Austin, and Adrian. So as the leaders of the kind of the community side of being ran for the Unionomicon stuff for the foundation for a couple of years, he got us involved, and so we had our own unique take. And so we each of us brought our own piece of flair to the story of the paper. And so, we talked about the Armed Forces Jam and the influence that it has to the Orlando, as well as like why it's important for the military side to think about utilizing game jams as a rapid prototyping tool.
Oh, that was like super interesting. And we do acknowledge all of those great people that were part of the team. What do you think about AI, augmented reality, virtual reality? What do you think the impact's going to be on the world in like 7 years?
Oh, I can't just wait. Apple just release what they're making and it just changes the world and everyone will adapt. It's not So AI is an interesting topic.
And AI is used in games.
Yes, but I think in hoping on what you're referencing is a lot differently than what I view it to be now, right? AI is like, your car moving by itself in your game. Yes, that's AI.
Yeah.
But there's machine learning. There's a lot of AI based on art and construction, right? Of like, does it sabotage the jobs, right? You go into a website, put a description, and it's gonna spit me out a computer generalized image, right? Because some AI built it, right? A lot of people are concerned with that front, right? We have this whole focus on Chat GPT, right? Of what it can do, right? This ever learning presence of an AI, right? It's evolving and making better. You have augmented reality, which I've have my fair share of experience in building releasable, augmented reality platform and experiences. I think that's a unique take, a unique avenue for companies to dive into. It's a unique marketing element, if done correctly and done well. Virtual reality is that I think that we're still kind of in limbo on it's important, it's doing a thing, it's a unique mechanism, it can do some stuff. I have a released product to it. I have other things that I want to release for VR. It just allows you to be connected in an even further uniqueable space. It allows you to be there, be in somewhere that you haven't been able the opportunity. So, playing a game on my computer is a very different. Sure, I'm playing Call of Duty, but I can put on a headset and look around the world completely, stand in the middle of this room and be like I'm physically there, right? VR it's a whole different piece, because then you'd have like mixed reality, which is kind of merges the augmented reality and VR stuff, where it takes a digital world and put it in your physical world. And I think that, this goes back to the question you were having about future in games, right? We have these in-tool technology concepts, right? And I think that how the industry evolves and utilizes these, right, will even cement them. We were talking about like, crypto and blockchain and stuff like that. That's a whole separate market that's kind of continuously going to grow all across the world.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So, are you planning on attending ITSEC this year?
The guys we've considered on putting together another paper, depending on how the events go for this year, for those that are in Orlando. But it's an interesting path. I'm treating this year as kind of an open whiteboard and not really setting expectations. I get to go to GDC in just 2 weeks. It's really the stepping point. I have the opportunity to go some new other shows that I've never gone through with this new role. And so I think potentially that might be the avenue that I take, depending and trying to, to visit back in Orlando as much as I can.
Okay, so when you go to GDC, and for our listeners, go ahead and tell us what GDC stands for.
Sure. GDC is the Game Developers Conference.
Yep.
Happens in San Francisco.
And it's coming up right around the corner here. I know that Tony's going, Matt's going. There's a whole crew of people from Orlando Game Space that are
So
going.
Tony and Matt, including myself, and a shout out to Michael Scicciano, as pronounced. We are all CA, so we're conference associates. So we are volunteering for the week, and so we will be wearing special colors around and doing a series of events for all of the convention goers. So we will actually be working the event a little bit differently than just participating and going.
I think that's the best way to go, honestly. I love volunteering, and that's what I do as well. I like the volunteering part, but one of my peers had asked me, hey, am I going to go to the Learning Guild that's coming up in April? And I said, yeah, put me down, because you get to interact with the speakers, with everybody else in a totally different way. They're not feeling like, oh, you're going to come and try and sell me something. You actually get to know people on a personal level that you might not have actually met. So I think it's brilliant.
I mean, I've gone to the show many times, and this is the first time I actually become a CA. And now that I am a CA and I have a successful year, I will be easier to come back next following year and eventually, build into leadership, into being a thing, right? So, as you very well know, I can run events by the back of my hand.
Yes.
And so I look forward to hopefully treating this as my new creative space
Mhm.
and supporting peace on a much bigger capacity. Because as you very well know, as I thrive under challenge. So
Yeah, you like the adversity sometimes too. Yeah, it always makes us sharper for sure. So, what ethical dilemmas do you foresee by the use of AI, augmented reality, virtual reality? I mean, there's a lot of discussion around this. What are your thoughts?
I think that, I mean, of all of those, ethical is just really on focus on AI. To me, that's the biggest thing right now. We bring up ChatGPT and like what
Right.
AI can do. I mean, I really don't see, AR has been around for a while, VR has been around for a while. Like it's its own thing. It's like you're either are or you're not, or you're going to get invested into it. AI and where it is now is very different than what it was like 5 years ago. It may existed, but it has much more shine and more limelight than ever before, because we have the two trains of like, because AI can do it, then paying an artist to go pay make the same art, but I can get my art in literally 12 seconds versus having someone spend 8 hours and 12 iterations
Mhm.
on constructing. I can just put a text in the screen and be like, I want a bunny in the middle of a field that's have swimming gear on it, and 12 seconds later it's like done.
So here's how I would compare that to is we have fashion and slow fashion. Fast fashion is stuff that's just, it's done, it's quick, it's doesn't have the ability to it's inexpensive materials and it doesn't last long, in like a year you'll be going, okay, what do I do with this? Slow fashion is handcrafted. There's an artist that's there, an artesian feel to it. And so I feel like that still becomes how we differentiate all of this is that sure, you can do it in seconds, but did the 20% rule apply? Is it 20% different than somebody else's art that's already out there? It
I think the big line is, with AI, right? All of that is pulled from real things, right?
sure.
Things that already exist on the internet, right? It can pull someone's art because it exists in like a digital portfolio, right? And it's referencing all of that data,
Mhm.
right? And that's where it's like, oh, I can look at this picture and I'm like, oh, it totally referenced this other image that may exist over here, and there's a similarities because that's how it relatively, to my understanding, this isn't a realm that I'm going to say in here that I'm the well-versed subject matter expert here, but
Oh no,
from
we're all learning. I mean,
what I gather from it, that's kind of how it works. And I've used ChatGPT a couple times, and it's pretty interesting of what it can try to do and tackle, right? And you can utilize it for positive and fun and stuff like that, but it AI is a very interesting tactic, right? It's a Skynet for our modern world.
yeah, it definitely is. So what is the best mentoring advice that you want to share with our listeners? It's so hard to believe it's been an hour, but we're wrapping up here. So what is it that you would tell them?
Get involved. I have been doing that ever since 2010. Get involved, rub shoulders, network people, go to industry events, get involved with local communities, participate in events. As you said, volunteer with events, right? You never know who you're going to meet, right? My journey's been my journey, but there's other people who have met the right person at the right time and that have blossomed into something amazing for those individuals. And it's great that they've been able to grow in the way that they have. But I think that's probably the best thing. I'm pretty knowledgeable in my piece, but I'm doing a whole series of mentoring even in my new role. Right, I didn't expect to be doing that, but my project manager has been soaking up the knowledge that I can bestow upon her, and she's been doing great. So it's you never know what you're going to be able to do. Always listen, right? God gave us 2 ears and 1 mouth, and you should double listen from before you talk.
Yeah.
And so for those that can understand that kind of concept.
Mhm. How can our listeners find you? We always provide your LinkedIn profile and
Sure.
your websites, but we've got both websites. What other channels are you active?
I have I have a huge digital footprint, so I guarantee you, if you put my name in Facebook or Twitter or LinkedIn, you're going to find me in all of those three major areas. I have an Instagram as well. For Phoenix, we have a whole website as well as an Instagram that exists out there. I know that you're going to share a bunch of my links and content. But I think the easiest two ways of really connecting with me, my LinkedIn, I am on it literally every day, and then my Facebook for those who utilize Facebook, or even Instagram, it can still connect to itself, that exists there.
Thanks so much for sharing all of that information also. I appreciate that. Well, Chad, I want to tell you it's been a delightful catching up with you. I think this has been really nice. We've been doing a lot of conversations on Discord and text and all over, but it's really nice catching up with you. And I look forward to when you come back to Orlando, or maybe I get up to St. Louis.
All right, come out for a baseball game.
Oh, yeah. I've been there. I lived in St. Louis. So good place to be. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, everyone.
Thank you to our sponsor, Cat5 Studios, and thank you to our production team, producer and editor, Josue Gonzalez, and music by Sophie Lloyd. Visit Employers for Change at www.e4c.tech to learn how you can create real diversity and inclusion culture while scaling your employees and interns for the future of work. Thank you for supporting the Intern Whisperer podcast by subscribing to us on Podbean or our Employers for Change YouTube channel, or streaming from your favorite podcast channel.